We're blessed along with Abraham, Galatians 3:9, not apart from, but with. Clearly then, what was required of Abraham and the Old Testament patriarchs is something that we also need to be doing, of course. There's not two different paths to salvation, or three or four or five. Our legislature they opened their proceedings every day with prayer. And I remember, I don't know what flavor, what denomination he was, but he starts off his prayer, God, Buddha, whatever. You're all one, and we all worship. Where do they get this stuff? He's supposed to be minister of the Bible, and he's telling you can worship any way you want to. Blew my mind when I read that in the minutes. Anyway, Exodus 19:5 says, "Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then shall you be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people." Above all people. So there's a blessing that we get that's extraordinary. "For all the earth is mine, and you shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel." Becoming a kingdom of priests is the same goal we have, or should have. Revelation 1:5 says so. And what all this means is that if you want to be a priestly tribe, so to speak, spiritually speaking, in the coming kingdom, you'll keep the covenant, you'll learn the covenant, you'll be able to teach the covenant. You'll be able to teach people. Isaiah 30:20-21, it says, you'll hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk you in it." When you go off kilter, you go in the wrong direction. There's going to be voices telling you, you're going to walk this way because this is Yahshua's kingdom now. No more of this hanky-panky. So he says you're going to hear a voice, and you'll see your teachers, he says. Isn't that interesting? I don't know who it could be other than those who come through this life and are acceptable to Yahweh and made a priest in that kingdom. I've met a number of priests, basically, of the Catholic persuasion. Tell you what, those guys know their stuff. They know. They're very intelligent. They've done a lot of study, and they go, through lots of schooling. A priest in the Old Testament, he was nobody's fool. I mean, he knew, and he had to practice every day his faith. A priest has to know his stuff. How can we be a priest? We never kept the feast, if we never kept the Sabbath. Do people even stop and think about this stuff? Yahweh's going to say, now that you've, they wouldn't even be there. It's just amazing how he works with his people. We become a family. He teaches us. We learn. And then we go out and teach again. The same thing in the kingdom. It's going to be that way. You have to know what you're going to teach. And there's no better way to know something is to be a teacher of it. If you teach something, you have to know it, because you're going to have people question you about it. You're going to have people not understanding it. You got to get into it deeper, and you've got to know it. So here we are trying to learn Yahweh's way so we can teach others one day, perhaps, if we're found worthy. If you want to be a priest in the coming kingdom, keep the covenant. The priesthood, anciently, the physical priesthood, simply represented a more important future priesthood in the kingdom. The Ark of the Covenant that Moses was commanded to have made is only a replica of a spiritual one in the heavens. According to Exodus 25 and Revelation 11:19, you can look it up. Is that old covenant dead and buried? If we have symbols of that in Yahweh's realm. Did he do away with that whole system? Why does he have, menorahs and stuff? I mean, if he does. Why would he do that if all this is abolished now? You can attack this from so many different ways. You come up with the same conclusion. It's the same from Old to New Testament in what Yahweh expects. except for a few administrative differences like in the priesthood. Because of Yahshua, he becomes our high priest, and because of the sacrifice that he did. But other things really haven't changed. We find later on in the millennial kingdom, there's going to be sacrifices again. And people, you're kidding me. You know, you're not. Yahshua did away with that. I mean, that's gone and forever, you know. No, it's held in abeyance now. But Yahshua's role is going to change. Yahshua's going to be Yahweh our righteousness and not Yahweh our salvation. So with a change in that, the people don't have Yahshua as we have him. A different role is taken up. That's the only explanation I have. They have to do like Israel did and go back and sacrifice animals again. That's what it is. There may be another explanation, but it's right there in Ezekiel, you know, in Isaiah. So when Yahweh gave Israel a covenant that included 7 annual feast days, something monumental was going on, something big, because as we're going to see, these feasts will be a part of Yahweh's kingdom, and we as spiritual Israel will be observing them. And so will the whole earth. He told the disciples, no more now I'm going to keep the Passover with you until I keep it anew with you in the kingdom. So there's Passover. We have tabernacles talked about in the millennium. If the nation doesn't go up to keep tabernacles, guess what? They got a plague. They're not going to get any rain. If Egypt doesn't go up, they're not going to get any rain. So everybody's going to start keeping these feasts like they're supposed to in the kingdom. And if you don't have rain, you got what? You got famine. You don't have you have famine, what do you have? You got disease. One thing leads to another. It's serious stuff. They're going to be forced to do it. Why not do it now and be blessed for doing it? Be blessed. Exodus 12 is about Israel observing of the Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Passover in Egypt and the feast in the wilderness after leaving Goshen. Before even the law was given at Sinai. Notice that? They're keeping part of the law even before they even got to Sinai. Keeping the feast. In effect, before the law was given at Sinai by Yahweh to Moses. Israel could not have a feast in Goshen where they were living. Yahweh specifically says to come out and keep a feast in the wilderness. Come out. That was the main reason Moses went to Pharaoh. He said, let my people go so that they may keep or hold a feast to me in the wilderness, Yahweh said. Exodus 5:1. People never finish that famous statement. They say in the movies and so forth, he goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. And then silence. Why don't they finish the verse? Well, because we do Xmas now. We don't do tabernacles. So we're not going to talk about that. You know, what we see here is the beginning of redemption through the Moedim, or the appointed times, the appointed seasons, and was for the express purpose of holding these things, these feasts, that Israel was to do when they were released from the captivity of Egypt. And that's why we talk to people. They want to get baptized. We say, you know what? You got to start keeping the feast now. Because just as Israel, when they were released from the captivity of sin, they started to be obedient. So if you're not willing or not ready to do that, I'd say you're not ready. You better just do a lot of praying, and maybe you have some growing to do. Then maybe you're ready. But if you're not ready, don't make that step and then not be faithful to it. You're going to keep the Sabbath, the feast, as Yahweh commands. It's a big step. It's the biggest step you'll take in your life. It's the feasts that bring us out of the world of sin and draw us closer to Yahweh and the redemption through Yahshua. And that is the all-important lesson. This is a crucial truth in Yahweh's word, dealing with his people. The feast and Sabbath present to Yahweh's people an outline of his entire plan and the purpose for the whole earth. And that's how critical and necessary they really are. And most people just blow them off. That is why Hasatan has done his level best down through the millennia to create counterfeit observances, to keep them busy, you know. Keep them busy over here. They're forgetting about the truth over here. I've known brethren who struggled with a spouse that can't let go of Xmas, and they fight it and fight it and fight it because this is their religion. There's no other way to say it. This is their religion. They don't come to the feast. They keep the world's religion and all the other days that the world keeps. So Satan's really got it down, get them all busy over here and they forget about the truth over here. Not only to keep people from observing the biblical feasts, but also to make them think they're pleasing Yahweh when they aren't. These are my feasts, Yahweh thunders in his word, and society today responds with that command with deafening silence. Blank stares, deer in the headlights, oblivion. Doesn't even faze them. We read another command in Deuteronomy 5:33, you shall walk in all the ways which Yahweh or Elohim has commanded you, that you may live. Live, and that applies both ways, spiritual and physical. And that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall possess. I've known so many believers who have lived well into their 80s and 90s. I don't think that's by accident. Yahweh blesses you with a long life when you're obedient to him. But anyway, the world doesn't get it. Whenever Yahweh says do, whatever he says he do, humans respond with passionate apathy. What he says don't do, man jumps at with full enthusiasm. Don't believe me? Listen to the chatter out there the third week of December, and they're just crazed by this observance. Learn not the way of the heathen, Yahweh thunders, and man not only learns every heathen way and custom, but invents new ways to enhance the observance to be even more profane. As a boy in nominal churchianity, I remember the minister reading Acts 2, and which, the churches say is the beginning, quote, of the church, which it really wasn't. We just read Moses said in 1 Corinthians 10 that this was the assembly in the wilderness, so it's, nothing's new under that sun. But I remember them talking about Acts 2, and I thought, wow, something that important, and I wasn't that old, 10, 12. I thought, why don't we do something about it? We just talk about it, but we don't do anything about it. That's the one that they all accept, Pentecost, Feast of Weeks. They don't even know it has another name. Anyway, and how important it was as the birthday of the church, as they say. So I wondered, if it's so special. Yet, we were always also reminded about Whit Sunday, Epiphany, Lent, Good Friday, and Ishtar. But these weren't in the Bible. That's what never made any sense to me. And yet, the 7 annual feasts were scattered throughout the scriptures, and somehow for years, we just never even talked about them, never even read the scriptures. Just went to Paul and said everything's done away. There was Pentecost, big and bold, and we totally ignored it. They mentioned it, but they didn't do anything. These are my feasts, Yahweh says, and we look the other way, dismissing them as just Jewish holidays. Another thing they don't get is Israel was just one of the 12 tribes. We're talking about a nation of Israel with 12 tribes, and Judah is just one of them. So all of Israel was commanded, not just the Jews. They never get that. They never will get that. So anyway, think about that next time that you hear these crazy arguments. So we let the world and the church traditions choose the holidays we kept. They basically chose our worship for us. The 7 annual Moedim are appointed times of Yahweh. They foreshadow future events. Colossians 2:16-17, Paul tells us that we should not let unconverted outsiders convince us of or judge us concerning keeping these days. Let no man therefore judge you, and it means really no outsider, in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of a new moon or a Sabbath days. These are a shadow of things to come, but the body of Messiah. See, these are witnesses of something coming. If you have a shadow, first you have a shadow, then you have the real thing. See? So Yahweh gives us a shadow. We participate in the shadow, and then we'll have the real thing. And then he'll say, wow, now it all makes sense. Now I know why I did what I did. In the early New Testament assembly, all believers observed these things, the Sabbaths and the feast days, weekly, annual. Today, Yahweh asks, who am I? Find out by keeping my feasts. You'll learn about me. True worship includes keeping my feasts. Yahweh never commanded anything more than that as far as observing days. You and I are here in willing, humble obedience to that command. And what a wonderful thing to see brethren of like mind willing to come before Yahweh and sacrifice this world and this life for something far greater. And one day you'll be rewarded for that obedience. You'll be rewarded for it. Don't ever think you won't. It may not have been easy to be here. You've had to give up some things. You may have faced persecution from family, friends, schools, the boss. But this is nothing new. I've seen it for 50 years. Nothing new. I remember when my son was going to, well, he was in elementary school out here, and the principal called me up like he was doing something nefarious or something. I understand that your son wants a week off. I said, yeah, we keep a religious observance, the Feast of Tabernacles at that time. And he tried to kind of argue me out of it. I said, listen, sir, my son has kept these days all the way up to this point in his life. Once he leaves this school, he's going to keep on keeping these days for the rest of his life. So don't try to talk us out of it. It's something you're just going to have to live with. And I'm sorry, I just asked for your help and given an excuse absence. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just trying to practice my faith. And if you'd allow us to do that, and he changed his tune after that. I don't think he had put it in perspective. And I know that they face a lot of truancy and a lot of kids that just uncontrollable. I understand that, and I feel for them. But in this case, it was so legitimate, and yet it took an explanation. But anyway, I know it took some for you too. I'm sure each has a story. Hard to get here, but you got here, and that's what matters. Yahushua said in John 15:10 that if they have persecuted you, they will, try that again. If they have persecuted me, they will persecute you. It's guaranteed. You can bank on it. And if those in churchianity think they are persecuted, they ought to, try the truth on for size and see how that works. You don't know persecution until you follow Yahushua in the way he commanded. Again, Acts 14:22 says that through much tribulation we enter the kingdom. We find in 2 Timothy 3:12, all who live righteously are going to suffer persecution. Now, I know that we're seeing a change in our culture, and anybody that believes in the Bible starts to get persecuted, and I guess we're probably at the top of the list. So anybody that lives closer to the Bible is going to get more persecution, but that's okay. We can handle it. When you resolve yourself that you're going to give everything up for him, then, that's what you do. When you come to the point that your life takes second place to Yahweh and his word, and he becomes your first priority, then, hey, I can take anything. What do I fear that man can do to me? No one can take away my salvation except me. I can do things, that could really jeopardize it. But I don't live my life to please others, and I hope you don't either. And I've noticed, too, brethren who come, they walk a different walk. They listen to a different drummer. They're just different. They don't, the world doesn't have such a hold on them. Yeah, we have to live in it. Yahshua said that. You got to live in it, but you don't have to become a part of it so that it dominates your life. And they're different. They're just different. They think different, and they look at the world differently. And that's the way it is. I look at an apostle, and I think, he's the same way. Look at John the Baptist, going out in camel's hair and coming around a corner and biting off the head of a grasshopper. And he's just weird, a weird guy. But he was, Yahshua said, no man greater. So if you want to be great, be weird. Just kidding. And I've had people, they've had to tell their employee, my employer is not going to dictate my faith. If I have to change jobs, I will. I will for the truth. That's more important than anything. And I've noticed that those that do well. Sometimes, usually, better than what they had before. They have to find something else to be employed by. Yahweh's not going to fail you. You think he's going to put you, as a hobo under some trestle somewhere, living out of cans and wearing old shoes and stuff? You think Yahweh's going to allow that when you follow him? It ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen. He calls, we actively respond. Passivity isn't going to cut it. You can't just sit back in your rocking chair. Going halfway is unacceptable. He expects a total commitment, and that's what we're doing. And if this is the first time you've heard such things, then make this the first commitment that you plan to keep from here on. Total commitment to Yahweh. There are several here who came without their spouse because their love of Yahweh came first. That's very commendable. They're standing solid, and that can only be a good witness to their mates. Think about it. Your life is a preaching message to everyone you meet, and especially your mates. A wishy-washy attitude shows a wishy-washy faith. And that won't hold up to anything. At the first volley, they're going to be the first to fall. I look at the patriarchs of old, and I wonder if I'll ever rise to that level. Man, can you imagine what they did, what they went through? Can I ever match that? If the Apostle Paul would question his own worthiness, where am I in that spiritual lineup? Look at the persecution he went through. Have you ever had to be let down in a basket to avoid an army after you who would kill you? Ever been in 3 shipwrecks or whipped 5 times within the inch of your life or stoned 3 times and yet turn right around and keep on going with even more force? That's just the physical trials. And then think about all those assemblies that go haywire after he starts them. You get some guy in there preaching something else. People get all messed up, and so he's got to go back and straighten it all out. And we're reading about these are letters. Most of the New Testament is letters to these different assemblies. We're reading private mail here to these assemblies. Not private, because then they passed it around to all the other assemblies, a lot of these letters. But he had to keep hammering the truth and say, look, you're going the wrong direction, turn around. You can't go that way. Had to worry about them, worry about his own life, worrying about just getting places. It's a different world they had to go through. We have nothing to compare. We have nothing. Well, we're thrilled to have you. We're so glad you came. You come out in obedience to Yahweh's word, and there's nothing more important. It's our first tabernacles here. Let's make it a feast for the record books. If someone has an issue or problem, help them out. Help them out. Serving. Yahushua said he didn't come to be served. He says, I came to serve. He said he didn't even have a place to put his head. He didn't worry about himself. He didn't have any creature comforts at all. But yet, look at what he did. He turned the world upside down because he was focused on others. So get involved. You heard Deacon Steve talking about get involved here, Volunteer, get involved. The more you get involved, the more you'll get out of the feast. And you'll benefit your brothers and sisters, and that's going to give you a lift. There's nothing greater than giving rather than receiving, to give you a spiritual lift. Sacrifice of yourself. And you're going to reap many more rewards than just sitting there and expect to be served. That's not what the feast is about. That's not what living the life of Yahushua is about. So Yahushua came to serve, and I hope that we all have that same attitude. And you'll leave here a different person, I'll guarantee it. And you'll want to come back next time, do more serving. May Yahweh bless you.